Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Not too bad. Sorry I was a bit late. I was just getting my fiber modem has finally arrived, or router. So I just had to go fetch it from the gate.
So that's exciting. So you're not using fiber now, but you will be?
Yeah, I've been on a 4G card, which has been a bit ropey. But you do what you have to do. And the fiber's been in the house. It's already set up. But the way they do it here is they configure a router for you and they send it to you. So you've got to wait for that, which normally takes 2 days, which isn't too bad. But for some reason, the provider that set things up here didn't. There's only one major provider that I know of. It's called Vumatel, and they had the address wrong. So the guys that I've used to sign up my service with, they couldn't find the address and match it to the fiber connector. So they had to fix it. It's an administrative issue, not an installation issue. So it's taken them 10 days to sort that out. It feels like 10 days. It's pretty shorter, but anyway, that's been done. So now the router's arrived. I've plugged it in. So once we finished here, I'm going to go and see if it all works.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. I'm jealous.
Well, it's the beauty of a new infrastructure, because I think the US has been on the old T1, T3, E1 lines, I think they called them back in the day. And the problem is to replace all that with fiber, you have to go dig up all the pavements, which is what we've all done.
I do. Some people do have it. But it is. That needs to happen first. So I do have some friends though who have it in their homes, but it's not everywhere. So how was your vacation?
It was great. We were in Cape Town for 6 days in the wine farm area. So Stellenbosch, if you ever look it up, at a hotel called Spear, which I can highly recommend. I'm actually a bit of an idiot because I didn't take my laptop with me, and if I take my laptop with me, I probably would have stayed an extra 3 or 4 days because the hotel was that good with the kids. Really bent over backwards to make it a good stay for us. So yeah, very, very impressed with it. And what I took with me was my iPad, which in fairness, I could have probably done most of my day. If it was a normal working day, I could have probably got away with using it for email and Word documents, PowerPoints, and that sort of stuff. But I'm responding to a thing at the moment which requires 2 screens and a lot of backwards and forwards and that. And the Wi-Fi there wasn't wonderful, so you wouldn't want to be trying to do something and getting frustrated by that. So we're back. One of the reasons we came back was that, but also you can only spend so much time away from working and that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, good trip, good red wine and good white wine, good sparkling wine, good meat, a typical South African holiday and beautiful landscapes.
That sounds nice. I know I've had South African wines. I was just trying to remember the names of the wineries and it's escaping me, but
there's hundreds.
Yeah.
My wife bought, because it was our 10-year wedding anniversary, and this is why I sent you the text about QR codes. I think that's the find of 2021. Everywhere you go, there's a QR code to scan that takes you to an app or takes you to a website with all the information. So like all our room service menus were QR code based. The menus are still paper based. But I think that's just an ambiance thing as opposed to a practical thing. And we went on this wine tram, which takes you go basically park at like a central point, and it takes you down the track. And as you go down the track, you stop along, it's a hop on, hop off sort of thing. So you go to Rickety Bridge, which is one of my favorites. We were at, what's it called? I can see the name, I can't think what it's called. But anyway, you go to each one, and each one's got their own sort of speciality, if you like. So the first one we went to was sparkling wine and oyster pairings. And then the second one was a Rickety Bridge was pinotage and a couple of blends of chocolate. And we were going with the kids. It's a bit long to do three, so we went back for lunch and ended up going back to the hotel for lunch. And then we did wine tasting at the hotel. So you can do blends and Merlots and Cab Savs, and I'm a very red wine drinker. And pinotage is quite unique to South Africa, so it's quite a strong grape. But yeah, lots of fun, lots of relaxation in the sun too. It's always good.
Yeah, get some vitamin D. So the QR code thing, are you seeing that as like a contactless thing in response to COVID, or were you just noticing them? Okay.
Well, you sort of, they've been around for a long time, like barcodes have been around for a long time, and you take them for granted in the sense that they just do a job. But I think in response to COVID, to mitigate, contact services, you've seen them. So in the UK, I've seen them when you go to a pub for lunch. You'd have a sort of scan here QR code to get the app to do your order on. You can do the whole order and pay through the app. Or it's for informational purposes. So, as I say, the room service menus, the guide to the hotel, which used to be a printed out folder with everything in it, map of the real estate, all the services, etc. That would all be a book you flip through. That's all a QR code. And it's a nice way, I think, for, there's obviously a cost reduction because they don't have to go print a whole lot of books every time they make a change to something. And there's digital environment where you now are QR coding, you're scanning something, it's taking you to a menu. The menu tells you what they've got. Now that can be updated dynamically to remove items off, which they were doing. So, there was a day where they didn't have the mussels that they normally have. So that was off the menu one day. And I said, hey, where's the mussels gone? Because I wanted to have that today. Oh no, we're out of stock. So that now takes away completely their need to, but the staff still need to know it's out of stock, but they don't get asked by people that haven't been there before, hey, where's the mussels? Obviously, we'd been there for a long time, so we knew the menu off by heart. So we're like, hey, I want to have, a steak tonight, I want to have curry tonight, whatever it is. And we'd notice when things would come and go off the menu, and when things would come on the menu. And I just thought it was such a cool way because they're printing out the menus all the time, they're kind of fixed on what they offer. But now with a digital view, they could actually change that. They could go, their line fish of the day could be kabeljau, or it could be bream, which it was the one day. They can dynamically change it in the menu without having to reprint all the menus, which means the chef can go in the morning to the markets and get what they want, and actually just have a day where they just completely change the menu, and no one would know, but they'd be surprised. So I think, I'm seeing QR codes everywhere. I'm sure everyone else is. I'm not the first one to see it. And I think it's a good translation layer to allow people to adapt to COVID, and also to share information quickly. And I'm seeing on business cards as well, which we've always had them because it made sense as a marketing thing. But instead of giving someone a business card, they say, hey, I scan my QR code. And that would go straight to a LinkedIn connection and do the connect. And I had about 3 people do it with me this week, which when one person does it, it's quite a novel. But when 3 people do it in a week, you're like, wow, that's actually, now it's taking off. And it's actually built into the LinkedIn app. But these guys have actually taken the QR code and printed on their business cards. And they were from 3 different companies, but they're all wine guys. So maybe it's a drinking, sort of culture now because they all network all the time. So it's quite, I think it's a good move generally.
Yeah, I think you're certainly more likely to scan the QR code than type in www.linkedin.com/, much more likely to it's fast and kind of, I think there is like a novelty to it, but I haven't seen it as much. I don't know if it's just because, I haven't been out in over a year, really, to witness that. I think there are probably restaurants using it here too. But I haven't seen it on a business card or anything like that. But to be fair, I haven't seen a business card in person in quite some time. So,
well, it's funny you say that, because I was chatting to one of the guys on the tram, and I gave him my card. He says, "Oh, I haven't seen a business card for ages. Do people still do this?" I said, "Well, I don't know, but I got hundreds of these things, and I just carry them with me to give out, because it's easier than me wasting, breaking the conversation and saying, oh, give me your number, or at the end awkwardly saying, oh yeah, give me your number, we can keep in contact." The card's an easy way to say, here's my card, drop me a line if you want to chat. Then there's no pressure on being friends post the contact, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but then at least you don't lose it. I actually printed out my first batch of physical business cards, I think in February 2020. In anticipation, I was like, it's my year. I'm going to go to more industry events. It's going to be great. Going to make myself business cards. And then actually, by the time I picked them up, I knew that these things weren't happening. So it was kind of just like, it's not like he spent a bunch of money on it, but I still have a whole pack. So it's my business card.
Yeah, we changed addresses. So I had a set from the first address and then the second address. And now obviously as I say, I'm probably giving out maybe one a month. So it would take me 750 months to get rid of all the cards that I've got. That's probably why I give them out so freely, because it's like, just use the card. It's got my number on it, that sort of thing. I still think it has value that way. At least it's something physical.
Exactly. It's tangible. Although it would be interesting as sort of a substitute, you could have a QR code on your phone, and have someone scan that and just have that be, that takes them to your website or your LinkedIn. It's kind of like a substitute for
like I say, in the LinkedIn app, there is a QR code. But if you think about the workflow to get there, so now I've got to unlock my phone, I've got to go to LinkedIn, I've got to click on my face, and then I go view profile, then I go to the gear. I mean, this is like already 5 seconds.
I'm following along.
And then I'm going to find it, and you see I can't find it. So that's already, it doesn't work. So you've got to have something. So yeah, I agree. Having it printed out now, I'm now curious to try and find it again. But do you think I can find it? No, I can't find it. No. Maybe I didn't see it there. I don't know. But it's something that like all our business cards for Hilo have them on. Whether people use them or not, I don't know. But I did have to show someone how to scan a QR code. I mean, once they get, because I think that's the other thing. You see all these QR codes everywhere. But does anyone know that your phone will actually pick it up through the camera? Or they think it's just a fancy looking barcode, and then they expect you a fancy device to read it.
Yeah, I guess it kind of probably depends what industry you're in and how accustomed people are. But I mean, I guess that's another thing that with all of this that, tech literacy around that will increase, because, if you're going to your favorite restaurant and they don't have a menu posted on the outside, they just have a QR code, you're incentivized to figure out how that thing works. And they probably have like, a step-by-step, pull up your phone, pull up your camera and center it over the QR code and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and when we were doing the generation, you actually can choose to put instructions in the code. So you can generate the logo. So you can generate the code, sort of just the code. Or you can generate the code and put a logo in the middle. Or you can generate the code, put a logo in the middle, and you can write instructions at the bottom. Or you can just do the instructions at the bottom. And you can say, please scan here with your camera. And it puts it in a really small font. But then you've got to print it sort of 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters to see it, because we did do a couple of tests with it. But that's one way to bridge the gap. But you're right. I think if there's any positive out of this whole COVID pandemic mess, is that we've brought everyone's levels up using Teams and using Zoom, and that is probably the most common finding. But also these other little tricks that we've all known about, they've all been there, but we've never really leveraged them.
Yeah, taking things from sort of a novelty status to really practical, integrated, everyday type things.
Yeah.
And I think some of this stuff, I mean, it's nice to have. I think, obviously seeing people in person, interacting, especially with family in person, is, I think, always going to be preferred. But having the option to sort of bridge the gap with, face calls. I think, I knew my friends growing up who would face call their parents, especially in college, like they were international. It was like a big thing. Any friends I had whose parents were living internationally, they would Skype them. But people, in the country, that wasn't really a thing. You might call your parents every now and again, but now I think it's sort of, I suppose there's FaceTime and stuff, but I still think it has made that more common, just to like make other types of interactions happen, not just like try to plan face-to-face meetings.
Yeah, and I think that, I hope that kind of stuff stays, although I do find it frustrating when you're sitting in a coffee shop or a restaurant, like we were sitting the other day, and a guy's FaceTiming his girlfriend. He's got his face and his phone sitting in front of each other, talking to each other. And I'm thinking, how much, like, what was the point, firstly? Then also, I can hear the entire conversation because they're both talking without headphones on or okay, obviously, if you've got the headset on, you still hear one voice, but not two. But we know exactly what they're doing this weekend. And I think, I think some people need to maybe there's not really rules, but there's certain manners that need to come into it where you don't do face calls in the middle of public. You do it in a bit of secluded area. Maybe I'm just approved that way. I don't know.
I think there's some etiquette to it. I mean, just like, I think most people wouldn't, taking a normal phone call inside most businesses isn't considered very polite. I mean, you're not supposed to do it on an airplane or, in the hospital or something like that. They're like, do it in the lobby or whatnot. So probably a norm that will just develop over time.
Yeah, it's something that I've seen everywhere. I mean, I remember walking around Sainsbury's the one day and I was watching a lady walk around with her phone in front of her, FaceTiming. And she'd actually, in the time that she'd walked around, I'd filled a trolley full of stuff and she hadn't put one item in the trolley. And I was like, well, I was kind of thinking, what's the point of coming to the shops to talk to your friend and then actually not doing any shopping? I'm just going to sit and have a cup of coffee and talk to her there while you have the cup of coffee. At least then you're achieving something, but that's just me.
So I know you had sort of an iPad workday story with the trip. Was there more to it than what you mentioned at the top?
Well, so I think the first thing is that was the first trip in a long time I didn't take a laptop. And I got into trouble for not taking a laptop because I had to come back for work. And I could have probably done some of the work on my iPad, but because I'm working on something that's got a lot of documents, and it's not just a lot of Word documents, it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, project planning, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, meaty piece of work that has to get done. So I just took the iPad I always travel with one iPad, which is my book, really. So it's an old iPad mini that I read on all the time. And I've got the iPad Pro, which I take that as my sort of intermediate device. If I need to do something, I've got it. But we use it to watch movies on and all that kind of stuff as well. And with the Wi-Fi being a bit dodgy in the hotel, I download a whole bunch of stuff during the day while we're out on Netflix, and then we'd come home and we'd be able to watch whatever series we were watching without worrying about the Wi-Fi being an issue. But where this was really cool for me was when we got on board the aircraft, sort of my son was doing his thing, playing with his cars and whatever. My wife was sitting with the baby. And I started reading my book and I thought, actually, I've got my iPad, let me see if I can work. So I took out the work that I wanted to do. There's a couple of emails I wanted to follow up on that. Now, you're obviously in an offline state, so you can only do so much work. And one of the things that I found frustrating, I'll start with that first, is that I was trying, the night before we left, I downloaded everything I needed to work on onto OneDrive on the device, so that if I did want to do something or had some time, it was all there. But the problem that I had on the iPad is every time I try to open a Word document, for some reason Word tries to contact some server on the internet to open the files. You can't actually open any of the files that you've got. So you just look at them. So that was irritating. But besides that, so what I did instead, and this is what I was trying to explain to my wife this morning, is if you've got an idea in your head and you just want to capture it, you can just open your iPad and you can just open your app and start writing. Now, there's lots of apps that are really good, like Drafts is quite good for this, where you just open up and you start typing straight away. There's no rigmarole to getting into it. And even with Word, you can open it up and you can open a new Word document. It takes a couple of seconds, but then you're into a Word document. And you can just brain dump stuff down. So that was quite a good experience. And what I quite liked about it in comparison to a Windows device, and I'm talking about that sort of with what I've got as opposed to what everyone's got. If I were to work like I was working on the plane, it would be very difficult to do. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So I'd have my Word document open and I'd be typing away. And then my son would need attention. So I'd close my iPad, I'd put it back in the seat cover, I'd do something with him for 5-10 minutes. Then he'd get distracted by something else and not need me anymore, and then I'd have my time. So I'd pull the iPad back up and I'd open it up, and once the facial recognition has logged you back in, which takes, split seconds, you're right back where you were and you can just carry on. Now, my experience with a Windows device is not like that. Is when you close your device and you open it up, it takes a couple seconds to open. And I know I always beat up Windows on these chats, but it's the thing that always bugs me about it is it takes so long to open. Then you've got to log in. Now, my fingerprint reader, for some reason, has stopped working. So now I'm going to type a long password. So now it's even longer. By the time I've actually got back into it, my son's back to me going, Daddy, I want something. So now I've been distracted again. Now I have to close the device again and put it back in the seat pocket so I can do what I need to do with him. So that backwards and forwards cycle on the Windows device, I won't even take it out on a plane. Never mind that in the seat space between, we don't fly business, we fly economy. That seat space, the Windows device that I've got does not fit there. It's just no way that it fits. It's just too big. But this 11 is perfect because you pop it up. It's on the Magic Keyboard. It's exactly the right size, and it's right back into where you were. So I feel like I'm stealing time back instead of losing time. So I've managed to write about 14 pages between the flight there and the flight back, and I'm only talking about a 2-hour flight. Of stuff that I needed to get out of my head. Now, I'm not writing a book, but I mean bullet points and paragraphs of stuff. 14 pages in basically, let's call it 3 hours of time. I thought for that, it's a superb tool in that sense. And then, of course, when I got back online, all the emails that I'd get up, replying to them online, which most guys will do, or most people will do, is they'll do the email on the flight. Then when they land, it just fires off. All that stuff worked. All the documents I had worked on, they were new documents. I was able to save those into OneDrive, so those all synchronized. So it got back into the channel. It's just these little nuances that I think Microsoft needs to fix to make the iPad work really well. But other than that, it was actually ideal. Now, if I didn't, so that's one piece. The other piece is battery life. For that 2-hour flight, I only took off 5% of the battery, maybe 6%, which, okay, it was opening and closing the whole time, so I wasn't using the full time. But, if I had to work a full work day after that, I would still be able to use that, probably get 6 hours out of it, 7 hours out of it, which I've never gotten with a Windows device. And I think and I've never used a Surface in anger the same way. That would probably be the only thing I could compare it to. And I don't know many guys that don't have their battery pack plugged into their Surface all the time when they're working. It's the first thing they do before they even open the thing up.
Mm. Yeah, I was just thinking, if you had a Surface with Windows Hello and, it was a lightweight one, the experience would probably be a lot more similar. Obviously, Microsoft, I guess the blessing and a curse of being on all the hardware and not having, a lot of devices just won't have Windows Hello. And face recognition is just really nice. So you can see how that would be would just remove that barrier of having to like fuss with the device all the time and kind of keep you in that workflow.
I mean, my best, yeah. If I turn around and I flick it up and I log in, I'm logged in already. And it's already an Outlook, which is what I was in before. If I want to go do something else, it's that experience. I think Apple's just got so right. If I could justify buying a new machine right now, I would probably be buying one of the new M1 processor Macs. Just purely on this, because I mean, as much as I need to write code and all that stuff every so often, I'm really thinking that to do that through a WVD device is the way to go. Because I think that's where the Windows ecosystem is. That's your bang for buck, I think. Let's end it off there because I want to go get my fiber sorted out.
Oh, yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, and we can chat through that process on the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks, Heather.
Bye, Ryan.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.